things about construction and kind of the process that goes into building either a new home or putting a renovation on your house, an ADU, an addition, whatever it may be. Kind of want to give you an idea of the entire process from the beginning to the end and what to expect. I'll try to make it short and quick so that I'm not here talking to you for an hour, but there are 10 points I wanted to cover. So let's have at it. The first thing I want to go over is the most important part of your project, and that is your budget. Now, your budget will define everything with your project, the scope, your selections, everything. Now, you have a $20,000 budget. Don't expect to build a new home with a $20,000 budget. So you have to be realistic with what you have to spend. And I really advise people to sit down and make a spreadsheet and decide, does their budget fit the scope of work that they have? Now, a lot of people come to me and say, I don't even know. I have no idea. Price per square foot can help you generally get an idea of what you're going to spend. Now, you're going to go online and you're going to see costs from Home Advisor and Angie's List and all over the place. Those really aren't accurate prices, to be honest. And I've built many homes and done many additions that just don't fall under those guidelines. So, with that being said, take the national average, and if you're an area like New York City, Manhattan, you're going to be way above the national average. If you're an area like the middle of Tennessee, you'll probably be below the national average, unless you're in a major metropolitan area. And that really will define your pricing. If you're at $600 a square foot, which I have done projects at $600 a square foot, that's high end. If you're at $150 a square foot, that's on the lower end. So you really have to kind of gauge not only the size of your project, but also kind of what level you want to land in. Is this something where you want to have tile that is $35 a square foot or $5 a square foot? And that will help you put together a budget. But start with a spreadsheet, decide what you want to do, and put together your budget. Very first thing you need to do. And that will help you create this entire project and set the baseline for everything you have to do from there. Now, the second piece that you have to think about is, what exactly is it that you want to do? And it sounds like a pretty general question, but I can be honest with you. I get customers who call me and say, I have this space and I just, I don't know if it should be a garage conversion or an ADU or should I renovate? If you have money to spend, know where you're going to spend it. Don't just put it in the hands of the contractor or the architect, because they're either going to overbuild for you or underbuild. And same thing will go with the expectations. They're going to either have created something amazing for you, or you're just going to hate what they've done. So it's really up to you, the homeowner, to decide what it is that you want to build or what you want to create. And doing that is just, and I know it sounds really simple, but it's really going to help, again, with making your project successful. Now, for the third thing, what you have to do next is you have to hire a designer or an architect to put together your project or your idea. You cannot go to a contractor and say, hey, can you give me a price? I want to build an ADU. The contractor is going to say, well, how big? What are your finishes? Where is this going? Is this even going to be approved? There's too many questions involved, and the price will be so variable that it won't even be a real estimate. So you don't want that. What you want to do is to set aside a budget for architecture and design and go into the project looking at it as two halves. The first half is design and architecture, and the second half is going to be to build your project. Now, many design build firms they're all 100% in-house, but still have them break down their budget in two pieces. If you go sour with them in the design phase, you can always hire somebody else to build. So during that design phase, they should take you all the way through to having your permit issued. Now, really important part is when you are looking for an architect or a designer, you can get a couple of bids from them and get an idea of what your price is. You know, if you really like working with this person and they're on the higher end of the price range, sure, go for it. If you're trying to save money, which isn't always the greatest idea, but if you are trying to save money, go with the lowest price person. When it comes to design and architecture, that is the first step that you need to put together your project. Without it, you're just asking for trouble. Okay, so the fourth piece to this is going to be to put together your entire design and submit it to the city for approvals and permits. So once you've sat down and you've hired your architect or your designer, you're then going to go through the process of getting your vision out of your head and onto paper and something that you can submit to the city. Now, this is going to include selections like windows, what color, what type, tile, color, type, fixtures, finishes, cabinets, all of those elements that are really going to nail down your design and architecture part of your project and make it a much easier build. If you go again into the situation with no idea, shooting from the hip, you're going to go over budget, you're not going to be happy with the relationships, it's just going to be too much gray area and a lot of arguing. So really sit down, hone in this stuff with your architect, and they'll help you. A good architect will take you through this process without any problems whatsoever. Then you have something that you can turn into the city, and then you start that process. All right, now we're at step 5, and this is called the approval process. Now, once you get all of your elements into the city, you're still in that design phase, in that architecture phase. But what has to happen is the city's going to look through your plans, either in planning or building, and they're going to decide whether or not what you've designed is going to be approved by their municipality. So if they have disagreements, or if engineering, the city's engineering wants you to change things to suit their code or to suit their setbacks or requirements, you're going to have to then work with them, and there's a back and forth to this. Most architecture and design firms will charge an hourly rate to do this, and oftentimes you may have to have what we call an expediter involved with this process. Most design firms will have an expediter that they work with that will help that communication with the city and speed up the process. But be patient, because this process takes a long time, and in this current status of what we're going through economically, it's taking longer than ever. So be patient, and your stuff will get through the city eventually, and you'll get those permits in hand and be ready for the next step, which begins the fun stuff. All right, so here we are at step 6, and that means you are ready. You have your permit from the city, you have all of the applications are completed, you've paid all your fees to the city, you've paid for your permits, you've paid for your taxes on the permits, and there's a lot of fees involved with this, so don't go into this thinking that a permit's gonna cost you a little amount of money, when really you need to do a little bit of research into that as well, because permits can be expensive. There's a lot of taxes and fees too. They're making up new fees every single year, so I can't even tell you all the fees. There's so many of them, and your area of the country or your city is going to be different than the next city, so really pay attention to that. Anyway, you have your permits, they're in your hand, you're ready to build. What you're going to do is you're going to take your plans and you're going to get some bids from contractors. So my advice, get 3 bids and have those contractors give you some numbers. Talk to those contractors, whether they're coming from a company like Sweeten or if they're coming as a referral from a friend who's done work with this contractor in the past. Take that information, and don't always go with the lowest price. Don't go with the highest price. Go with the person that you think is going to give you the most value. And value is a huge word. We use that all the time, every day of our lives, and it's It's part of everything we do when it comes to finance. Value is inclusive of not only the cost of the project, but the relationship with the contractor and what you think you're going to get in return. So again, here we are in the process. You have sent out your things, you're getting bids back, and you're ready to hire a contractor. All right, so here we are at step number 7. And 7 is you've hired your contractor. Awesome. Great. Now you have to get all of the paperwork involved. The first thing you need from that contractor is the contract, right? So AIA is a very typical contract, probably one of the best contracts out there. It really works for both the homeowner and the contractor evenly. There's no strange verbiage in it that's going to create issues. But you may end up with a smaller firm or a smaller contractor that doesn't use the AIA contracts. Really want to be careful, read through that contract, and make sure that it's fair for both ends. This also goes for the contractors out there. You need to make sure that your contract is an amicable contract, not something that is everything that's written in is in your favor. There needs to be a give and take here, and it needs to work for the particular project. Don't leave in inclusions and exclusions that just don't make sense. You really have to take the time to put together this contract so it really works with your customer, because it's binding you together for the duration of the entire project. So the contract is really important. The second piece you really need to look at is the insurance. Make sure that both parties have the proper insurance. Sometimes involve an insurance broker, and they'll take care of the entire insurance process for you. They'll make sure that the customer has the proper insurance, the contractor has the proper insurance, and everything is jiving. It takes a lot of that guessing and do I have the coverage out of the whole equation. So now you have your contract and your insurance is in place and you guys are ready to go. The next thing you need is a pay schedule. So certain places have certain rules. In the state of California, a contractor is allowed to take 10% or $1,000, whichever is the lesser, in lieu of a down payment to start your project. Now mind you, that down payment doesn't mean that they are on the job working. This is a down payment that is payable before they even come to your job site. So you may be 2 days into the job and get a 20%, 50% billing, and that is perfectly legal. The contractor can bill any portion of the job that they want at any point, and that agreement is usually laid out in the contract, so you know where you're at progress-wise to the payment. Now, progress and payment are very important parts of doing business with a contractor. You never want to leave yourself either above or below the actual progress of the job, and that actually goes for both the contractor and the consumer here, because if you were to break ties, if something were to happen to either one of you, you don't want to be left with a negative balance or owing somebody. It's just best to keep it as even as possible. Now, the AIA contracts also have an element called AIA payments, and those payments are usually issued back to the consumer from the architect. So the architect is involved often in making decisions of whether or not the project is meeting its progress deadlines, and then these payments are able to be approved and sent through and paid off to the contractors, keeping it a very even job across the board. So with that being said, your job is underway and everything is going great and you're ready for the next step. Okay, so for the next step, the next thing that's gonna come up is the almighty change order. Now the change order, if we rewind a little bit, can sometimes create issues with the initial bidding of the job, and this is something you want to be careful with. There's contractors out there that will underbid the job, thinking that they can get you to sign the contract and go with them, and then get their money back in change orders. And it's a common practice, honestly, in contracting to do that. So going with the lowest bid isn't always the greatest idea, because sometimes these people are just waiting to get you back with every single change order. And these change orders can add up to 60, 70. I've seen as much as 80% of the job in change orders. Now, on the other hand, if you're indecisive, if you haven't put together a budget, if your design isn't great, these change orders are going to fly in, and that's not necessarily the contractor's fault. Again, the due diligence is in your hands to make sure that you've ironed out the project to the best of your ability and something that's going to really make sense and help you stay on budget throughout the entire project. So change orders are just exactly what they are. They're a change order. You've either issued a change or they've found something in the walls or in the cement that they didn't expect to find. And this is what will create a change order. Now, the change order isn't immediately agreement between you and the contractor. The contractor still has to present you the change order, and it's up to you, the consumer, to either approve or deny or have a conversation about that change order as it stands. A lot of contractors will throw a change order in and just give it a crazy sum that just makes no sense in comparison to the project. This is where you need to ask yourself, is this right? Is this a fair price? Look it up, do your due diligence again. Don't believe everything online. You're better off talking to other contractors, not your friends, not your realtors, again, other contractors, and find out if what they're charging you is fair. Okay, so here we are at number 9, and number 9 is going to be your taste level. Now, if you are somebody who wants to build on the high end of things, your costs will be exponentially higher than somebody who's building on the lower or mid-level range of construction. In calculating this price per square foot, you really need to take into account your taste level. Change orders affected by taste level. The whole project is really going to be affected by you deciding what level of finish you want to have in your project. Take a look at tiles, see what you like. Take a look at finishes like your countertops. If you want natural stone or if you want quartz, there's going to be a price difference. It'll start to give you an idea of what reasonable expectations are for you in your project, and so you don't go way above and beyond what you can afford to build. All right, so lastly we have number 10. And number 10 is simply be excited about your project. This is your project. This is your collaboration. This is your chance to put a little piece of you into your design. You're collaborating with the designer, you're collaborating with the architect and the contractor. Own it, take control of it, and make something that you're gonna be proud of. I'm gonna be doing a few more videos here on building homes, and I'm gonna do a ground up from dirt to finished product in Palm Springs for you guys to check out. So stay tuned, subscribe, and I hope that your project really puts a smile on your face and keeps you motivated